Welcome to the Queer Stoic Podcast, where I'm aspiring Stoic with a capital S. More about that later, but I promise it's an important distinction. Attempts to better understand himself as a student of philosophy and a transgender man. This week is a reintroduction to the show since my last episode was December 25 of last year. It's July 2025. Where have I been? What have I been doing? We will get into that. Lots of things happened. Tears were shed. Shells were broken. Truth unleashed. All the things. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So let's go ahead and get into discovering Stoicism and what Stoicism actually is. Stoicism is not repression or burying feelings like the lowercase Stoic term has as a connotation. Stoicism as a belief system, or really rather a philosophy, not really a belief system, but a philosophy, believes in examining strong emotions and learning the root cause of them to better understand yourself and your reactions to events based on a dichotomy of control. A dichotomy of control is what is within our control, such as thoughts, for example, and what is not in our control, such as another's actions or thoughts. So other people, we don't have control over what other people are going to think and do, but we can control what we do, and we can control our own thoughts and such like that. The basics of Stoicism and the difference between being a lowercase Stoic and practicing uppercase Stoic. As mentioned in the intro of this episode, there is a big difference between lowercase Stoics and uppercase Stoics, or Stoicism as a philosophy. Emotions are not repressed, but understood at their root, and examining visceral reactions to understand why and how to avoid overreacting to situations, particularly negative emotions such as anger, sadness, or fear. Joy and happiness are just as important and are never discounted or examined in the same way as negative emotions. Stoicism is about finding a path in life that aligns with nature and its great beauty by not fighting against it but working with it to become a better person, not ruled by emotion alone, but rationality, humility, tranquility, and the four cardinal virtues. More on those later. Making the best of a situation despite setbacks or tragedy is one of the biggest tenements of Stoicism. Making sure that you are not letting outside actions, outside events affect your own inner peace and tranquility, and moving through and weathering the storm. That's a big thing, weathering the storm. To not shirk the responsibilities as a human in society and taking action to better not only themselves but those around them as well, not in as you must do what I tell you or you will be a bad person forever, but offering help and guidance like volunteering or donations for causes or for just causes, for example. A public service, quote-unquote, of the altruistic kind instead of ego. Ego is a problem in many different ways, so we're just going to leave it at that at this point. My introduction to Stoicism actually started with a man named Ryan Holiday and his podcast, The Daily Stoic. He was a big inspiration for me for this podcast and also just Stoicism as in general in my journey with Stoicism and being a practicing Stoic. He opened the floodgates to a hyper-fixated whirlwind of interest and study, and discovering the various works I had already heard of but never really paid attention to, and having my assumptions of Stoicism blown out of the water, which I'm hoping to do for you as well in a slightly different way. I'm a little bit on the quirky side, to be honest with you, so I do have ADHD and a little touch of autism, so this is going to be a little random and slightly uncategorically weird. Let's just put it that way. It's going to be pretty weird and up in here. So let's get into the books that I started out with, and I think it's really a good place to start for anyone, to be perfectly honest with you. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. My absolute favorite quote is, "Remember how long you have been putting off things and how often you have received an opportunity from the gods and yet not use it." That is Meditations, James Harris adaptation, book 2, page number 20. Another book that I really enjoyed was Discourses and Selected Writings of Epictetus. And I have 2 quotes for this one, my 2 favorite quotes, and one of them, it just made me laugh. I don't know why, but it did. "I have to die. If it is now, well, then I die now. If later, then now I take my lunch, since the hour for lunch has arrived, and dying I will tend to later." Discourses and Selected Writings, Penguin Classics Edition, Book 1, line 32. Another quote from that book is, "I aspire to be the purple stripe. That is, the garment brilliant hem. However small part of it may be, it can still manage to make the garment as a whole attractive. Don't tell me to be like the rest, because in that case I cannot be the purple stripe." Book 1, line 15 through 16. Another really good book, and this is number 3 of 4 books. The Enchiridion, I'm probably not saying that right, also by Epictetus. This quote is, "The things within our power are naturally free, unrestricted, unhindered, but those beyond our power are weak, dependent, and restricted. Remember, if you attribute freedom to things which are not naturally ours and take what belongs to others for yourself, you will be hindered, you will feel sorrow, you will be disturbed. You will then find fault with the gods and with men." James Harris adaptation, book 1, page 7. The last book that I really started with was Letters from a Stoic, specifically Letters to Lucilius by Seneca. There are just so many quotes in this that I couldn't really pick just one, but I will make sure to link all of these books in the description for you to check out yourself, and maybe you'll find one and a quote from Letters from a Stoic that really speaks to you. And if you do, please let me know, because I love hearing that kind of stuff. So you are welcome to comment, or you can message me directly in one of my socials. They'll be linked in the description as well. A more recent development in my Stoicism, I guess journey is the word we're going to go with. We're just going to stick with journey. That sounds like a good word. Journey is a good word. More recent development in my journey as a practicing Stoic is the Stoic Fellowship Network. It is an introduction to modern Stoics, both in the community itself as well as writers sharing their Stoic wisdom. For example, some of the books that I have discovered include Breakfast with Seneca by David Fideler, A Handbook for New Stoics by Massimo Pigliucci, and Gregory Lopez. If I can say their names correctly, if I did not, I apologize. If they listen to this, I am so sorry. And then one of the fellowship members I have had the pleasure of interacting with directly is Bear and Forbear, Zen in the Art of Living by Lucian Sams. He's a great guy. Love interacting with him. He's been a very positive influence on me as a person and just my mindset here as well. So it's been a really, really interesting way of interacting with people on this online network for a traditionally in-person Stoa, which is the term for a school of Stoicism, is a Stoa, S-T-O-A. Once again, I'll make sure to link all the books I mentioned in the description, of course, including the ones that I have discovered through the Stoic Fellowship Network. So now we'll get into the cardinal virtues, the 4 virtues, capital letters here, the 4 virtues, and my seeing the light with parenting as well, and is mentioned in the title of this episode. So it's Stoicism, Queerness, and Parenting, because I do have a son. His name is Sean. He is 8 years old. He will be 9 in September. And seeing the light with parenting under the guidance of the 4 virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance or moderation, and justice. On the topic of wisdom, for example, my openness to the experience and perspective of my child and how he sees the world, because he is on the autism spectrum and has ADHD as well. We all know where that came from. The willingness to understand his motivations for certain actions, discipline, and character development, for example. The next virtue, courage, teaching him to speak for himself and use his quote-unquote big boy voice, a term we use to indicate even if he is sad or upset, he shouldn't shrink into himself and speak, but speak clearly and voice his emotions even if he's afraid or angry or upset, but be able to articulate his emotions and share them to make sure that he's not bottling them up and eventually they explode in either depressive or angry episodes or anything like that. One of the biggest ones is to not give in to peer pressure. He struggles with this one, such as dares and such like that. And he is only 8, so completely understand that one. We'll get into one of a specific story of that here in just a minute. The next virtue is moderation. Temperance is the original terminology as temperance, but in this context, it means moderation. Sean does have a phone since he travels short distances from my home to visit his friends in the apartment complex. So him having a phone makes sense because then he can text or call to let us know if his plans have changed as he travels from my house to his friend's house. He is responsible for this phone and keeping it in good condition, charged, answering phone calls and texts from his parents when we call or text to check in on his travels, teaching him moderation and to put the phone away when it is not being used with intention, such as learning, playing a game for relaxation, listening to an audiobook. Yes, he does have access to all these things with parental controls. Please don't come for me. One of the biggest one he struggles with is putting the phone away while walking, which he has trouble with since it is still a new novel thing to his 8-year-old brain. So we will work on that, but we're trying. The last one is the biggest one in my opinion, and that is justice. For me, with the parenting style that I like to do and like what I prefer to do with my son is being willing and able to stand up for others. There was a situation where the kids were discussing climbing the fence that separated the pool from the complex for security purposes. This pool was supposed to be opened that weekend, but wasn't. The kids were understandably annoyed and upset, but were making plans to do something potentially dangerous by climbing the fence into an unregulated pool. Some of these kids were not strong swimmers, so that you can probably guess why there were some concerns. And a lot of these kids, their parents worked. They were wandering around by themselves in this apartment complex, which is, on the whole, not really a bad idea, but they did lack the adult supervision that was probably necessary for something like this. Now, my son was not part of this discussion directly, but a concern was brought to my attention, and I took it as a teaching moment. If someone is talking about doing something dangerous that may hurt them or others, do not stay silent. Say something. Don't let them hurt themselves or others by doing something stupid. Say something to them. Tell them that this isn't a good idea. We're going to get in trouble for this, or something along those lines that a child will understand. He does struggle with that because he doesn't want to seem uncool. He doesn't want to seem like he's being a tattletale or something like that. So that's been a bit of a struggle with us as well. But on the whole, the 4 virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, are the biggest tenements of Stoicism as a philosophy. These 4 virtues guide our every action, reaction, and temperance and all of that with what we do on a daily basis. So what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're feeling is all under the guidance of these 4 virtues, and maintaining that throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year and years, maintaining those 4 virtues and maintaining all of that information and all of those feelings. So we're going to take a bit of a break, and then with a little bit more music, and then we'll hop into the queerness part of this. I promise I'm getting to it. I promise. We are getting to the queerness part of this because I am the queer Stoic, so it's kind of on brand for me. But here in just a moment, we're going to be talking about discovering my true identity as a transgender man. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. Here's some music as a break so I can get my notes situated, because I think I lost them somewhere. I'm not sure where they went. Welcome back. So now we're going to get into a little bit of emotional thing, so be prepared. If you want to skip it, you can. I would suggest not, though, because this is really important. This was around my early teen years, between 12 and 14, right around puberty age for me in this case, because I was a bit of a late bloomer. I am a transgender man, which means I was born genetically female, so I am AFAB, or assigned female at birth, as that terminology is, AFAB, AFAB. I went through a mental spiral that led to questioning certain happenings and events in my early teen years as possible gender transition markers when I started to realize that I might be a trans man, and that might explain some things. The feeling I would now identify as euphoria that I felt when referred to as a boy by a random stranger when my previously long hair was tucked into my hat, and I still had a very small chest at that time. Oh, I miss those days so much. The feeling of men's or boy-style clothes on my skin when shopping at the store. The feeling of euphoria that I would get from wearing those clothes. It felt nice. It felt really nice. Ties, just ties. The thought of them, the feel of them, the thought of being able to wear them when I got older so I could just be like my dad, who wore ties on the regular at work when he was required to. Love ties. Using male personas online in chat rooms and games, or predominantly male characters, and feeling more attached to them or identifying more easily with them than female characters was probably a big one. Puberty, just no. I hated the way my body was changing and begged it to stop on a daily basis, not being able to look at myself in the mirror anymore, because all I could think was, they're so big. Why are they so big? Why did I get cursed this way? Why me? Another big one was the anger. I was never flooded with the hormones that made me want to date or engage in activities with another person or even myself. I was just angry all the time for no reason. Angry at the world, angry at my body and myself. Something just didn't feel right. And I recently, within the last 2 years, examined these with the new context that I had in the queer community. Those are pretty good markers, pretty big indicators that a transgender situation was happening there. A conversation needed to happen with myself and other people as well. As it progressed into adulthood came and went. I still felt angry, wrong in my body, but decided to soldier on and be the woman my family thought and honestly believed I should be. I threw myself into feminine things, makeup, frilly under things, dresses, feminine mannerisms. I was probably the most miserable I had ever been in my life and ended up in a massive depressive spiral at that point. I got into a relationship that was in the end mutually toxic. I ended up being pregnant with Sean, and that beautiful baby boy became my entire world and encouraged me to soldier on again. I still felt like there was something missing, but don't get me wrong, my son is the absolute best thing to have ever happened to me in my life. He really is. I love him to death, and I would burn the world to the ground if I had to protect him. But there were other situations, hospitalizations, psych wards, a rotating regimen of med after med to try and fix whatever was wrong with me. I just couldn't figure it out. It didn't make sense. A 6-year-long relationship ended with tears and metaphorical fire. It's still awkward even today as co-parents, but it's better than it was during the relationship, if I'm being honest. Later on, I ended up meeting a trans man and started spending time in queer spaces, so actually being exposed to queerness and the queer community as a whole. And for the first time, I felt seen. I started researching, spending more time around queer people and learning the social terminology, social cues, and psychology of trans people, and feeling less and less broken. Meeting my girlfriend, the person that I'm with right now, and building the confidence to start experimenting with social transition in different spaces. I mainly stuck to work and small social circles for my social transition. Up until meeting my girlfriend, I thought I was non-binary, and in my mind now, as I'm actively transitioning as a trans man, I can see how it felt like a safer in-the-middle decision for me personally. I want to clarify that this was my transition journey and does not and should not describe non-binary people as a whole, as they are just as valid and seen as the other gender spectrum individuals and groups out there. So do not come for me. Once again, don't come for me. I tried binding for the first time, and the rush of euphoria that followed was what solidified my decision to transition into the man I always was inside. I just was unsure that's what was wrong with me until I understood the terminology and psychology behind it. When I got my first binder, I cannot even describe the amount of joy I felt at the sight of not having humongous tits staring back at me, because that is unfortunate. And top surgery is expensive. And getting on to with Stoicism and melding Stoicism and queerness, it really wasn't all that difficult, as it is a philosophical idea instead of being based in any faith systems that traditionally assign morality to gender identity and sexuality. Stoicism as a whole is a secular philosophy that can still be integrated into religion in certain respects, but is certainly not a requirement. So you don't have to have a religious faith to follow Stoicism, which is one of the biggest reasons why I was attracted to it as a philosophy in the first place, because it doesn't require any particular religious things. There are certainly religious vibes in some of the passages, such as referring to nature as divinity itself, but it is not hearkening to any particular deity. It's mentioned in some of the passages from Epictetus and Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and they do mention God or gods as a general term, not necessarily to a specific religion. The kind of the compare and contrast between queerness and Stoicism. Queerness is about self-discovery, feeling comfortable in your own skin, and being content with yourself in the scheme of the rainbow as one of its beautiful colors, or multiple. It is a spectrum after all. And Stoicism is in a similar vein: contentment, self-discovery, self-assurance, while adding living by virtue and being true to your fellow human, which I found many queer people are all for, including myself. Even before discovering Stoicism, I was and very much am a humanitarian. And I believe that we all play a part in the universe as people, and making the world a better place one step at a time, even with small, tiny, seemingly insignificant actions that we can take on a daily basis to make the world a better place for everyone. Even those that, unfortunately, may hate us for who and what we are, we still shouldn't hate them. Hate is such... It doesn't help anybody. It really doesn't. It doesn't help anyone, really. And I think we could all do with a little bit less hate in general. I recently came out to my family as a trans man. It was messy, poorly done, and resulted in awkward conversations and a slightly estranged relationship with my father. He lives in Pennsylvania, so he is about 500 miles away. So our main communication is by phone, text messages and such, phone calls, video chats and such, so he can see his grandchild, who he adores, and my son adores his pawpaw very much so. And he has remained in regular contact with my son, so that hasn't stopped, which is good. But we're not talking very much right now. He is still processing, and I have struggled with my own anger and my own feelings on the subject with him and his viewpoint and the messages that he has sent to me specifically. I did reach out to the Stoic Fellowship Network to help me find a different way to examine these feelings, these strong feelings I was having, to better understand where they were coming from, so I could try and reevaluate through a Stoic lens of how to deal with this and understand where my dad was coming from. And where my dad is coming from, it's really interesting because he's coming from the perspective of a father to his daughter who is transitioning into his son, which can be jarring, I realized, and difficult. So we're working on it. We're communicating, which is good. We've communicated. Things have calmed down, which is good. On the whole, everybody else has been great. My work colleagues have been widely supportive, just in general, and they continue to use the correct pronouns and correct name for me at work. It kind of helps that I introduced myself as that when I started working where I am right now, because I've only been there for almost a year at this point, but I've been socially transitioning for over 2 years, and I've been medically transitioning for a little over 1 year. So that transition has been in the works for a while, which is why the whole coming out to the family was a bit odd. Weird. Let's just go with weird. This is a weird podcast, so we might as well just go with weird as the terminology for the day. That's our word of the day, is weird. I found solace in Stoicism and the Fellowship Network, receiving nothing but overwhelming support and acceptance at the network, and it's been very nice to receive that solace in Stoicism, because it is such it's just comforting, really. It's a peaceful philosophy that I found that solace in, that I needed to examine myself and make sure that I'm not making poor decisions and letting my emotions take over and dominate my mind and my soul and corrupt the way I see myself and how happy I am now. And Stoicism has really helped with that. And I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm selling something. I'm really not. This is kind of like, feels kind of like a therapy session at this point, which I apologize for that. But it's important for me to voice these things and to describe how Stoicism has helped before we get into the nitty-gritty of what Stoicism actually is. The introduction, I'm kind of wanting it to be a little bit more easygoing introduction to this of how it has affected my life and how it could affect someone else's life if they're in a similar boat. Not necessarily the same boat, but a similar boat. They're dealing with strong emotions, difficult situations, difficult happenings in their life, and not really knowing which way to turn and where to find that peace and how to examine those things that are happening so that it does not disturb you as a person. It doesn't disturb your mind, your spirituality, your happiness. Making sure that your happiness stays intact and that you're happy with yourself, happy with your life, happy with your decisions that you're making in your life is very important. Now, I have not come out officially to my son. My son still sees me as a woman and still sees me as his mother, which I don't have an issue with him seeing me as his mother. I am his mother, and I will always be his mother, and that might be a weird way to put that to other trans men, whether they're parents or not. That may be a little weird, but I'm proud to be his mother. I grew him for almost 10 months. The little shit didn't want to come out. I fed him from my own body. Like, that was an experience that I had as a parent before I transitioned into a man. So that is part of my past that I would like to remain part of me. Now, to come out to him and tell him that I am transitioning into a man, I'm not really sure how to proceed, and I'd prefer to do so with the guidance of someone else, preferably a therapist who specializes in children and adults, and preferably someone who specializes in gender transitions as well, so they can help me with that conversation with him, to explain it in a way that he'll understand, and explain it to him in a way that we can grow together and understand where each other is coming from. Now, fielding questions about my appearance with my son has been difficult. I have been on T for over a year now, so I have grown facial hair. My facial structure has changed, and the binding confuses him, but he just says, "Why do you have bandages on your chest?" And I tell him that they make me feel good. And he says, "Okay," and then moves on, which I think is partially because he's 8 and he doesn't understand this. And in his mind, I'm still a woman, which I can't blame him for, because I haven't told him anyway. I haven't told him anything because of his age and my lack of knowledge as to how to explain it to him so he understands it properly and he's not left confused and questioning everything about himself as well. I want to be able to explain it to him in a way that he understands that this is my journey, and it doesn't affect him negatively, I would hope, but we'll see. I have been researching gender transition specializing therapists, and I'm hoping to find one in my area that's accepting new patients and takes my insurance, because let's be honest, in the United States, healthcare sucks. It really does. It sucks. After I tell him that I'm trans, regardless of his viewpoint, whether he likes it or not, I will always be the one who grew him in my womb. I carried him almost 10 months. I birthed him and fed him from my own body for as long as I could stand the physical pain of doing so. And for this, I am proud. And I will always be proud of it, no matter what anybody else says. Always be proud. So now we are coming to the end of this episode, and where I will start with what I will leave you with for the week ahead. If you're up for it, I have a journal prompt for you to contemplate to yourself or jot down any place you wish. Here it is. So, as it applies to your current state in life, are you satisfied with your journey thus far? If not, why? What would you change if you could go back in time? What would you change about your journey moving forward from now if you knew you could do so with no limits to financial, emotional, physical, or mental limitations? If you'd like and feel comfortable to do so, feel free to share your answers in the comments on the show or contact me directly at the contact points in the show notes. That's all for now. See you next week with a dive into the first of the 4 virtues, wisdom, and how to apply it in the queer life. Don't forget to follow the show and hit that donation link in the description so I can keep making content and feed my slightly concerning caffeine addiction. Have a great week. Bye.